Hello, I'm Ian.
And I'm Darren.
And welcome to the Average Bikers in a Cave, a show where a group of bikers chat and share opinions about all things motorbike, from news, reviews, interviews and the big questions. If you like what you hear, then be sure to subscribe, tell your friends and leave us a review.
On today's show we have a couple of new bikes, an update on fuel and some news on the electric future. Everyone's favourite part of the show, the big question this week, is how to shoot a biker safely. Do I need a grassy knoll? This week's episode is sponsored by Afterground, an exceptional drone, wedding, portraiture and events photography and videography company that specialises in capturing video and images on the ground and in the air in a style that is modern yet timeless, interesting and vibrant, with a focus on exhilarating moments and pure fun. Using their experience, skills and knowledge, they will work with you to ensure your videos and photos are exactly the way you want them. For more information or to chat to the team, head over to www.afterground.com or check out their Facebook page. Check-in time. Ian, how has your, well, I say week, it's been 2 weeks because we've been busy.
We have been,
so
yes,
we've had that
absolutely.
2 week kind of gap. So how's your 2 weeks been?
It's been fine. Out on the bike a bit. So there you go. There's all my M's coming in straight away. That's what happens when you've been 2 weeks away. You just kind of, it's M&M's. We should sit with a bowl of M&M's.
Aye, episode three. Episode 3, I purposely left some M's in because we did talk about M's.
I think what we'll do is we'll bring in a bowl of M&M's, and every time one of us says M, the other one's got to throw an M&M at their face.
Or you need to eat an M&M.
You need to eat an M&M. Yeah, so
and then we'll never get back out of here. We need
exactly.
to have the base doors open to get out of the cave.
So what have we been up to? I took the bike out. I've been working a lot, so I've been using it to go to and from work, which is maybe about 3 or 4 miles, which is just a wee quick jaunt here and there. Took it down Ayrshire way.
Oh, nice.
Again, down through Troon and Irvine and all these kind of places, and just for a wee kind of one of the nice days. So that was quite nice just to get out and just
the coastal roads.
The coastal roads, yes, just to play a bit. But that's about it, really. To be honest, it's not the greatest check-in for me. I did. No, did I tell you? Did I build my Ducati last time?
You did build your Ducati last time.
So it's not, see, it's like I've been so busy just working away. I do not have very much of a check-in to do. The bike's running fine. I have ordered what are they called? I've completely gone blank in my head here. Steel wool, kind of steel wool things for my drill, so I can.
Oh, so you can
buff up my chain.
Buff up.
You know, so I'm going to go through a serious amount of WD-40 and ACF, whatever it is.
ACF 50.
ACF 50, the purple bottle with shiny stuff in it. So ACF, I'm going to go through a serious amount of that, trying to buff my chain over the next couple of days.
And that's not a euphemism.
Exactly. Got a couple of days coming off, so the bike's going to get a right good scene too. It's how I would like to put it, you know. So maybe there'll be some pictures and stuff popped up on our channel once we get up and running. Because you'll find out later on what we're chatting about later on, so there should be some visuals coming soon for the podcast, so keep your ears and eyes peeled.
That would be an idea actually, there before and after you've buffed your chain.
Well, exactly.
Just to see if the wire wheel and the drill bit kind of idea works. Or see if it works.
I think the thing about the reason I've got it is because my first year of having that bike, I sat in a shed and there was a hole in the shed and bit of water getting in, the chain get really rusty. And when I chucked it into the dealership to get its service, I was told, oh, you need to replace the chain and the chain and sprocket and all that. And I was like, oh gosh, cost me a few quid to get that done because of the rust. And then last year, you know, because I'm not as mechanically minded, I am your typical biker that loves to be on a bike but doesn't have a clue how it actually operates. You know, internally, you know.
Well, you know how to switch it on, how to throttle on, how to change gears. That's
exactly,
that's all you need.
I don't know how to, what all the wee up and down bits do. So, I took it, and one of my mates said, he said, you do not need to get all that. Just, you know, a bit of WD-40, a bit of elbow grease, and you'll get all that stuff off. So that's what I'm going to do. I did it last year. It came out a treat. Didn't have to get anything replaced. So that's my big plan for the next couple of days.
Nice one.
If anyone out there's listening, if you got any tips, send us a wee message on our social media pages.
We're talking about ACF 50. I did use ACF 50 in the beginning. But I recently moved to that XCP rust blocker, which is really quite good. It seems there's a, if MD's listening and they have any, depending on what you use, and each to their own. I know a lot of guys that use ACF 50 because they swear by it, and it was originally designed for the aerospace industry.
Right, yeah.
But there's a good video on YouTube if you can find it, and it's Bennett's that do it, and they take all the different coatings you can kind of put on your bike. So they use ACF 50, they use XP Professional, the Rust Blocker, they use the WD-41, they use a whole rake of them, and what they do is they get the same bits of metal and they spray it and coat them, and then every day they go in and they dampen, like they just spray all the bits with some water.
Right.
And they do that, and they do it like, I think it's about 7 or 8 months to show what ones fight the rust better.
Oh, cool.
And I watched that, and the XCP one was the better one. I think it was after about 4 or 5 months it started to get the specks of rust, and then it was kind of properly rusty after about 7 or 8 months, whereas like the ACF 50 kind of started showing up after the kind of 2 to 3 month mark, and then it kind of went downhill quite quickly, and I thought, oh, hey, wait a minute, I'm going to try that. So I switched to that. That was the only reason. But if you're out there, I would suggest looking at the Bennett's video. It's quite good.
I will do.
It's quite insightful how somebody's wasted like 8 months of their lives spraying bits of metal.
With a
When they could have been out.
misty spray.
They could have been out right.
What about yourself? Check-in, Miles. What have you been up to?
Work's been pretty mental, which is kind of limited what I can and can't do. Or, well, it's not true. You get to night time and you go, and you're just absolutely famished. So, but there's a couple of things. I bumped into a couple of guys that I know in the biking community, and they told me a couple of interesting little things. One, I think, one's definitely local to us here in Glasgow, and that is that the local Triumph here is shut. So we knew they were going to relocate. Well, that was the thought on them relocating, but apparently, well, I know it's not even apparently. I was there like a couple of days ago for a coffee, and it's all whitewashed. That's them. They've just cleared it out, which is tragic.
I was going to go in next week and buy a
It's
speed triple there, you know, but well,
aye, I know.
I have to look elsewhere now.
Oh, you can go to Edinburgh. I'll run you up. You can go pillion in the back. I'll take you up. You don't have to go to your triple. And then the other thing was just around Ducati. And apparently there's been lorries over at Ducati at the same bit that where Triumph is, because obviously it's the same owner. Yeah. Piling up V4 Multistradas, brand new ones, back into the lorry, because apparently they're going back to Italy to have the engines completely swapped out on them, which I think there was an article on the web this week about that, and just how that they're having problems. It's a bit in the engine, something to do with valves or something, and it's only from one of the 2 manufacturers that they use. Any that don't have any miles on them, they take the whole bike back. They've already got the engines there with the same VIN number on it, and they're swapping them out. But if you've got one with miles on it, you have to take it back to Ducati. It'll spend 3 full days in the workshop where they strip it all down and replace it and then rebuild it all and all that. I know, 3 full days in Ducati, that would hurt if you were to pay it out your own pocket. But you get a courtesy bike, apparently, and as part of that, they're going to give you free servicing for 2 years as a way of compensating you, which is...
do you know, to be fair, at least they're doing something.
Exactly.
You know, you wouldn't get out of a car.
No, not a chance. And then the other little thing I've got coming up this week is the advanced riding, the IAM, is back on. It wasn't supposed to start for another week, and they've pulled early. Back out on observed rides this week, which I'm absolutely dreading, purely for the point of view that I've probably forgotten everything that I learned last year. It might be like riding a bike, and, well, ironically, but you might just, it might all come back to me, but
you won't, because everything that you've learnt, you've been doing every time you've been out on a bike, haven't you?
Yes, Ian, I have.
Exactly.
No, it's not so much that, it's the fact that we haven't been out really on the bikes because of COVID, and that's been a kicker. But that's it. It's more gossip than anything else exciting this week.
Aye.
I don't even think I've had the bike out this week, which is tragic.
Well, to be fair, as I say, I use it to commute, so to 3-4 miles.
And I can just walk across in my jammies to commute.
Aye, you're all right.
With COVID still lingering about, apparently. That was the check-in.
Excellent.
And now, the news. I don't know why I did it in that kind of nose.
I liked it.
I think it's just...
Mixing it up a bit, you know.
I think it's the fact that we're recording this quite late on a Sunday, which is not normally like, because we're normally kind of on the ball, but it's just been one of these weeks. First up, this was something that I read that I thought was quite exciting. Swappable electric batteries. Which
absolutely.
MDL saying that normally would go, well, that sounds really exciting.
We're going to
talk about batteries. Honda, KTM, Piaggio and Honda have all signed an agreement to create a swappable battery consortium, which should sound more sexy than it actually is, but there you go. It's the first step towards resolving one of the issues with electric bikes, and that's standardising a battery. Means no more charging time, but actually you just drive into a petrol station or a charging station, you just take your battery out, plug it into a wall, take another one out, pop it in, pay for it, oof, and away you go, which is a good thing.
Is it though?
Well, it saves you. It saves you hanging about for like, and let's say if it's the live wire or an Energica, it saves you an hour having to charge.
Well, I'm just going to play the tight Scotsman here, right? So, no offence to anyone from Aberdeen. I mean, though I've just offended the whole of Aberdeen there. Mm-hmm. But the tight Scotsman would say, but I've still got 10% left in that battery. I don't want to swap over until I've used my 10%. I want to swap over at 0.1%.
Aye, but then you're playing what we used to get on the motorway, which is service station anxiety. So you're kind of driving along going, oh, I've only got 3% left in my battery, but do I come off here and waste the 3%, or do I kind of try and hang on? And you're like, nah, and then break down.
I suppose that the cost of electricity isn't that much, really, is it? In terms of, you know,
I think it was a penny a mile or something like that.
It's only a few quid or something in it to charge up your bike. So, you know, for that, it's peace of mind. But I'm just thinking, if you're tight as, do you know what I mean?
if every penny's a prisoner.
Exactly. But I think probably, to be fair, there'll be ways around it, won't there, I suppose. But
I think there'll probably still be the option because if you're going into a service station and you're going in for a bit of lunch, and a rest break, I'm doing air quotes here. The chances are you're going to be in there for about an hour anyway, so why would you not just plug it in and charge it? But
because you could
just go swap,
and it's
job's done. Now remember, this is only 4 out of the possible how many.
True.
This doesn't cover Zero, it doesn't cover Energica, it doesn't cover your live wire, it doesn't cover any of that. It's only, but it is a step forward. I think it's
the thing I think that in my head will make it realistic, is that ability to not have to wait a length of time. We've talked about this before, but I think you're right, and you know, and there's a couple of good big names in there, you know.
Yamaha and Honda and KTM I'll be Piaggio are big, most I think in the scooter market.
Yeah, they've got scooters, and I think certainly down south, they've got a lot of those kind of 3-wheeler things, you know, with the 2 wheels at the front. Can't remember what they're called, but they look really weird. But
it's one of those ones. It just depends how long it takes.
That's probably what a commuter type situation will be ideal for that. You know, when you are literally going to put a garage or something.
It means then you don't, if you're using that bike to commute, but you want to go that wee bit further on a Sunday blast or a Wednesday night run or whatever it may be, you can relax knowing that obviously once the infrastructure's in place, and that's the big thing, is the fact that when the infrastructure isn't there, the more batteries you put in circulation, the larger the infrastructure has to be. And until that gets to that point, it's going to be difficult to... It's not as if you could go, right, I'm going for a run and I'm going from here to Glencoe or here to Fort William. If there isn't a swappable battery station, right, between here and Glencoe or here and Fort William, well, you're snooker. You're going to need to plug it in and charge it. You're going to need
and I
option.
suppose it's like the electric car stuff, isn't it? A lot of these electric car stops you get in and it's part of your lease, isn't it? In the battery, you pay for your your electricity.
Aye.
But if you can't find one, you've got to go to a private one.
Yep.
And they charge you.
Aye, and they charge you.
You know, and it's like ATMs, isn't it? You know.
Aye, you literally just pay for it, and I mean, I think it's definitely a fraction what you pay for fuel. But
if you got an ATM. That's not a bank ATM, they charge you to take money out your own account.
You'll
probably find that's the kind of thing that will pee people off and actually put people off.
Aye. I don't know. I'd like to think it's going to be a good thing, and it's going to make it more attractive to people to go down the electric route. Having again, I think they are good. They're just going to need to increase the mile range slightly, probably to the 150, 200 mark. Maybe I think any more than that, what's the point? Because if you can go down the swappable battery route, it means you're not having to hang about for hours recharging it.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, when you go to a bike run, either if we go with a group or you're going out with an organised ride or whatever, how often do you go 150 miles before you then decide to stop for a coffee, stretch your legs, a bit of leather, something to eat, even if it's just a Mars bar or whatever?
Yeah, I suppose if you're out as a group of 12 bikers or something, is there going to be a battery there for everybody? Is there going to be?
Well, that comes back to the infrastructure. It's how many. It only when it gets to the point where there's enough of them in circulation, there's enough people buying them, does it then?
And they still charge quick enough that for the next set of bikers to get there 40 minutes or an hour later.
Exactly.
Your old battery's now sitting there fully charged and ready to go.
As opposed to you taking one out, plugging it in, you only get 50% in it. No, absolutely. There's a lot of stuff to, I think, still to cover off in that. But I think the fact that these four have got together cuts the cost down, which is a good thing, because then it should make it more feasible. They've said that the group are going to start looking in May, which is kind of new, to the actual standard, to look at standardising the shape and the spec of the battery. So that's obviously their kind of design stage. You know what I mean?
Aye, yeah.
Which is quite quick, considering. You know what I mean? I'd have thought it would have been right, we'll start looking at it kind of October time or something like that, but they seem to be kind of up running and starting to look at it.
I suppose it also restricts you a wee bit, because you can be a bit behind the curve. So you look at, you're going to see the spec of the battery is going to be this and it's going to give you this amount of, charge, but actually the new bikes that come out, it's like when you buy a laptop, and then Adobe release Premiere Pro, a new version of Premiere Pro, and you've not got enough RAM.
Aye, and then you have to go and either buy more RAM or, if you're at max, buy a new laptop. But there you go, swappable batteries.
It is exciting, though. I do think it is exciting.
I do think so.
Bit of a devil's advocate here, but I do think it is.
Well, that's
exciting.
the point. But that's the whole point. We shouldn't just go, "Wow, this is amazing," and accept it. We should actually try and poke holes in it.
Aye, and just say, look, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that?
Yep. What's next?
Next out, we've got a new bike, or a major update to the Yamaha MT9. The MT9, it's Yamaha's big naked bike, really, and it's the first major update it's had since it was back in 2013 when it hit showrooms.
Long overdue then.
Aye, absolutely, yeah. It's arrived last month, 2021 April, and it's been giving a going over by their R&D team. It's lighter and faster, and it has an improved triple engine. And this I quite like this. It starts at 8,999.
Can't fault Yamaha. Their bikes are, other than their MT125 or their their R1, others YZF 125, the kind of baby,
the baby ones,
the baby R1 or R6 or whatever. Yeah. They're quite expensive for what they are 125 wise, but the minute you get out of that bracket, kind of R3 and up, the price is tremendous.
Prices are great. So 8,999 is very appealing. Anything under the 10 grand mark for a bike now is pretty appealing, I think.
Especially that thing, because that'll be nippy.
Yeah, that'll shift.
Do you know what I mean?
So let's look at the triple overhaul. It's got a throaty grille and has increased from 847cc to 889. This sounds a bit rude, but thanks to a longer stroke.
We should have a giggity button.
Actually, giggity. New pistons, rods and cams, so pretty cool. A wee upgrade there, especially the stroke. A wee bit of that. What's that?
I am not editing that out.
No. What's that thing? The whispering thing. What's it called again? Is it?
Aye, that kind of trend that's doing.
I can't remember what it's called. There's some improvements in the gearbox and the clutch, and I'll add up to help. Add up to help the MT9 produce a very respectable 117 brake horsepower at 10,000 RPM, and a torque increase to 67 pound-foot at 7,000 RPM. So it'll shift and it'll overtake, and you might end up going to your backside if you're not careful.
One of the observers I had on the IAM run has a Tracer 900, which is essentially the MT9, right. But we kind of for touring almost.
Yeah.
A bit like one of our friends used to have. Shout out to Teal. The examiner, the observer passed me one night in his MT9, and he went flying past me. It was an absolute rocket. So the fact that they've added extra BHP and stuff to it is just going to make it. It's going to be such a, and he loves that bike. Do you know what I mean? He will not get rid of that bike because he just absolutely loves it, and he can throw it about like nobody's business.
I mean, I love my wee bike, but I'll get rid of it eventually. I don't have it at the point where I'm like, I love it to the point that it's the ultimate one I want. You know what I mean?
Aye.
Although I do like the look of it, but you know.
Aye, that's a whole other conversation. I think you should keep it and just get a second bike.
Aye, I know. Well, if you're listening, Susan, that's obviously not going to be an option. Yes, it is.
You can keep it in my garage.
Okay.
We'll
not tell her about the longer stroke.
No. No, I'll let you keep it in the garage for free. It's fine.
There's been some upgrades to the frames, making it lighter, more rigid. So in theory, it should corner better. Corner like it's on a rail, I think, hopefully.
Aye.
Yeah. There's some electronic inclusions also. It's got the same IMU as the R1. Traction control, slide control, wheelie control, and cornering ABS.
Anytime MD puts a bike out there and puts wheelie control on it, I think, well, it's got enough wheelie.
There's a warning.
Aye, it's got enough wheelie.
And a nice new coloured multifunction TFT as well. So well done, Yamaha. Nice job.
Yeah.
Ideally, we might get a shot at trying to try one out one time.
I know, but I'm in the process. I'm starting to try and shoo my foot into people's doors.
Nice.
And in a nice way, of course.
Of course. Go up and see them and give them a longer stroke.
I'm going to change this week's episode to episode 4, the longer stroke.
The longer
I'm
stroke.
actually going to put that out there as the longer stroke.
How to stroke bikers safely.
Swiftly moving on. Right, new Harley are doing the. It seems to be we kind of go through a week without talking about Harley bringing out some sort of. That we just talked about Pan Am quite a bit because we've done that last couple of weeks.
But it was, I mean, the pictures you took of that and going to see it in the flesh, it did look so even better than
in the flesh. It looks amazing. There was guys because it was only there for one day. I didn't know this, and there was guys that I know that are Harley owners that were desperate to go and see it and couldn't get out of work to go and see it, and they were absolutely raging. So if you haven't listened to episode 3 and 3.5, I suggest you go back and do that.
Yep.
But they've got they're launching a new 1250 Custom. It's another new Harley, but it's the kind of cross. It looks like a cross between a Fat Bob, which is the one with the kind of square light on the front.
Oh yeah.
The kind of rectangular light, and a kind of street rod. It has that same kind of. It's almost like see your bike. See when you get the cowl on at the back.
Yeah, I love the street rod. I love the street rod
on it.
When it first came out, I really liked it.
I looked at it and went, I quite like that because I like the cowl at the back.
Exactly, yeah.
But I like the front of the Fat Bob. I almost bought a Fat Bob because I liked it that much. But it's also, but the big thing is obviously they're putting this new 1250 kind of VVT Revolution engine in it that's in the new Pan Am. It'll obviously be tuned slightly different to around about 125 brake horsepower, which considering they get 150 for the Pan America, it's a bit of a downturn. Whether they actually take it as low as that or whether they maybe take it to about 130, 135 mark, who knows. But they're rumoured to be about 125, but they're keeping the torque. So they're keeping that 94 foot-pound of torque in it, which will have enough grunt in it.
Enough grunt, aye. Wheelie in it there. Nice.
I think this could be the replacement for the Sportster, because obviously Harley don't have an option really to get rid of the Sportster because of Euro 5. So the Sportster's gone. It's gone. And I think this could be a nice natural replacement. So watch this space. Again, the minute they get it out there or at least get it on tour, I'll be first at the queue, kind of chapping the door to get a look at it, because if it looks as good, if it has that front end and that back end on it,
that will be a very tempting piece of kit. You know what I
mean? I'm refraining for using this week's catchphrase, so you know what I mean. But yes,
you could go home to
exactly. Aye, lovely.
That'd be worth a wee good look at. I think the two of us would be kind of drilling over that, to be honest.
Aye, it's it'll be nice. Yeah. Next up,
also in the kind of cruisery type vein.
I've seen this.
Have you seen it? The new Rocket 3 Black, limited edition Rocket 3. So there's two now. They are black, and the GT Triple Black were made available to the buying public in the middle of April. I've seen pictures of it, but I haven't seen it in the flesh. And of course, the Yamaha was 8,999 retail. So the Rocket Black's obviously going to be kind of roughly around about the same kind of, if you're budget conscious, it's probably the one to go for at 21 grand. They are not cheap, and they are massive, aren't they?
It's a lot of bike.
I actually do. I mean, I'm just a wee guy, so I don't think for a second I could control one of them. I would panic about that.
Oh no, I think it'd be dead light when you go to moving.
Once you get,
once you get moving.
I just think, what if you can go down a wrong street and you've got to back it out? You know,
pay for the optional reverse gear.
I pay for the optional reverse gear, exactly.
Or don't go down those streets.
It's the same 2.5 litre engine with 165 brake horsepower, 146 pound foot torque. Same bike, so it's
mental.
Same tech as the main bike. Cornering, ABS, traction control, cruise control, smartphone connectivity. You know, the list goes on as we know about the bike. What's changed?
That's the main thing. What's changed?
Everything and nothing. Nothing mechanically or electronically is different. You know, so it still works. Is that the same as if you put the base nose? A bit like the Bobber Black. The Bobber Black just looked cool.
Aye. Did it have a slightly like a litre bigger tank or something like that? The Bobber Black, I think. I can't remember.
But I think the new Bobber, the 2021 Bobber, they've got a black type one that's almost like the old Bobber Black, haven't they? So it looks really nice.
I don't think it's as black as this thing though.
No, absolutely not. But all the stuff hasn't changed. All that stuff hasn't changed. But what has changed? It is now black, really black. Black engine, exhaust headers, heat shields, headlight bezels, fly screen, everything. Kills, seats, body, everything is black. Yeah, everything.
Aye, absolutely nothing's left. I think the only thing that's not black on it is the words Triumph and Rocket.
And even then, they're probably a really dark grey, are they?
No. They stick out.
Oh, do they?
No, right out, but they stick out enough where you can see them. But again, by the time you've looked at that, you're still drilling.
Is it safe though, having a black bike? Do you know what I mean?
Who cares?
My first bike I bought was yellow because I was always believed that yellow is like the safest colour in the road because you can see it in
because you can be
dark,
seen.
Snow, everything. Do you know what I mean?
Aye.
And obviously,
and you should wear a white helmet.
Considerably yellow as well.
I know, but it suits it.
It's like a wee wasp. But I do like the idea of everything being black. I really do.
Aye,
but that could be my kind of childhood Batman fetish that I've got, to be fair.
Aye, I think if you saw that thing in the flesh, you'd be straight in. I think you'd need to be physically restrained, bank card taken off you, just wandering in there going, oh,
it's probably maybe it was actually my wife that organised for Triumph to shut down in Glasgow so that I can't go in and see it.
Aye,
you know?
I would put money on that.
So you'd put money in that so that I didn't put money on that. Which is as you say, the only thing's not black are brake discs and the Rocket logo. Really menacing looking bike. And there you go. As I said, if Bruce Wayne was going to buy a bike, it'd be a Rocket 3 black.
Aye. And why would Bruce Wayne buy that bike?
Oh, because it comes in black.
Exactly. Everything's black on it.
Everything's black on it, exactly.
Aye, I think you've summed it up. I think that's the only way you can. That's the only way you could. That is a Batman bike. It is a Batman bike.
Unless you're a Marvel fan, then you could probably get away with Punisher. Do you know what I mean?
Aye, or a Punisher. That thing is black. I think the only way I could describe the R Rocket black. If you take a Bobber Black and imagine that, and we're going to go completely geek here. If you imagine that Bobber Black is Bruce Banner.
Aye, the Rocket 3 is the Hulk.
Is his alter ego because it has that same seat. You know what I mean? Kind of floating seat. You know what I mean? So
let's just take a wee moment.
To be honest, I'm glad Triumph is shut now.
I know. I'm not going anywhere near Edinburgh, so it's fine.
No.
Absolutely.
No, until the nice weather, and then we go, oh, I tripped Edinburgh.
I actually don't think I'd have anywhere to store that bike. It'd be so big. It would go through the floor of my shed.
I think it's a fair old weight to it.
We made a shot though. Quite like a wee shot.
Which again would require us to take a wee trip through Edinburgh. Of course. We could maybe go through in the train, take a shot at the bike, and then end up in Innocent Gun. The problem with that is though, you're going through there without a bike. The temptation for wanting us to buy a bike.
Okay. Good point. That's a very good point.
So
if we hold each other's wallets,
Aye.
No, because then I just buy it using your word.
I know. Aye, well, that'd be the worry. You know what I mean? I just go in and go, yeah, Ian, I'll take it.
Yeah. Do you think then if you bought that bike but you had a white helmet, you'd be like the fastest pint of Guinness out? Do you think?
Oh, aye, absolutely. You know what I mean? Or you'd be like the headless vicar flying down the street.
That's it.
And it would be flying down the street.
So nice. Anyway, what's next? What have we got?
I'm just okay. Before I jump on there, I've now just got this vision. I've just seen this white helmet floating through the air, coming back somewhere late at night, and just seen this white helmet floating because you can't see the rest of the bike. I mean, it's got brake lights on it. That we can get away right now.
Just for the listeners, we were talking about a motorcycle helmet, just in case you just get confused that somebody having zipped up their leathers.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? So
I'm not going to get that image out my head now. Here comes E10, and that's not a pop group or a boy band. In September this year, E10 petrol will be the new standard when filling up with unleaded. So should we be worried? What is E10? At the moment, standard is E5. So that's 5% ethanol, which is just simple alcohol. I'll caveat it at this point, it's not for drinking. I've never tried drinking it, but I assume that it's not for drinking.
it definitely doesn't smell like any craft ales I've ever drank. So.
Nothing that you've brewed, no. E10, at least in the UK, will mean that it's at least, or it's between 5.5% ethanol and 10% ethanol. I think at the moment it's no more than, E5 is no more than 5%. So, with that in mind, I thought we'd answer some FAQs after a bit of digging. So,
Cool, yeah, good shout.
Will it damage my bike? Unlikely. However, ethanol is a solvent, so it may attack seals or gaskets on older bikes, something to bear in mind. If you have a really old bike with a plastic tank, there's a small chance that your tank could swell, but again, I mean, that's most bikes, even older bikes, should be okay, but it's something to bear in mind. Newer bikes with O2 sensors in the exhausts, and I'm trying to think whether that would be in, because some of the bikes now have them at front and rear of the car. So, but yeah, if it's got an O2 sensor, they'll automatically recalibrate so that you get the best combustion. So there's no issue there. Older bikes with carbs need some tuning once E10 comes in, just because E10 runs that little bit leaner. What about performance and efficiency? So it's very, very small increase in power and a very, very small decrease in efficiency. It's nothing noticeable.
Hardly noticeable.
Hardly noticeable.
And to be honest, most folk won't really give that much of a care about the decrease in efficiency because they'll be thinking, well, at least I'll have an increase in power.
I'm pretty sure I read it and it was like it was tiny amount. It was an absolute tiny amount based on like a normal
negligible
tank.
Is the word.
Negligible. So many, 34 microns per litre to like 33.4 or something like that, so it's tiny. Or thereabouts, don't quote me on that. What about leaving your bike with a full tank of E10 in it? And this is where we get the science. I should have my glasses on, get the science. But
just say you've got your glasses on, nobody can see you.
Oh, good point. Alright.
Put your glasses on.
Put my glasses on.
Right, now, well, you look very sciencey now.
I know. Ethanol is prone to attracting water, but in order to attract water, or enough water, to cause separation of the petrol, it takes months in very humid conditions. Now, again, for riders in the UK, that's not an issue. But for any of our frequent listeners in other countries that do sometimes get quite humid, this is something that we need to be concerned about. Other than that, it won't make your bike sticky in key parts. You don't need to add anything to it. You don't need to add additives or cleaners or any kind of stuff like that. Anyone in the UK that's got any concerns over E10 and their bike, the government have actually got a website you can go in and check, and it actually gives you some details. So you go to https://www.gov.uk/check vehicle E10 petrol. They should have done a better job with that actual website, because that's horrific.
It is, yeah. Although, to be fair, when you look at it in paper, it doesn't look too bad. It's only when you try and read it.
It's only when you try and read it out, which is the downside. But yeah, E10 coming.
So remember, when you're filling in that website, don't forget your hyphen.
No.
To check whether or not you have to siphon.
No, because I got it. I
like that.
like that. That was quite clever. I got that website from somewhere else and typed it in exactly as it was. and it didn't have the hyphens in it. And I went, well, that website's not there. What is that all about? Had to go and actually go through the whole government website and stuff, and eventually found it.
Don't forget the hyphen to see if you need to siphon. There you go.
On that, I'm going to leave the news because that is just absolutely perfect.
Now we have
The
big question. A big deep voice question. Yeah. And our question this week is how to shoot a biker safely. Do I need a grassy knoll? Now, let me just clarify this before anyone starts going up in arms. The Average Bikers podcast is taking a slightly twisted turn. Aye. Exactly. This is not up in a grassy hill with a high velocity sniper rifle. Absolutely not. This is a look at cameras for your bike, action cams, for recording your journey, your trip. Yeah. Possibly some people may be using for like dash cam kind of idea as well. We'll talk about that throughout the whole thing. Yep. Aaron's given us a big point to the head as he took off his science classes. So just big thanks to the guys off the ground for allowing us some of the tech. We've had a few cameras that we could play about with. Some of them a bit more quirky and interesting. Some of them a bit more standard, but here we go.
Some of them I didn't want to keep back.
Exactly.
We all know what one that is. We'll get to that one later.
Get to that one, yeah, totally.
First up, we had a GoPro Hero 7 Black, which again is slightly out of date because the latest version is the 9 Black, and it's probably due the 10. Probably later this year.
I think the 10 must be due soon because there's money off the 9s at the moment. A lot of places are knocking £100 or something off a 9,
which isn't
big
bad.
Savings. It's pretty good, yeah. So
let's talk about the standard or the kind of spec on what the camera is. Yep. We'll have a kind of highlight some pros and cons, and then we'll talk about what we saw when we used them and our impression of them. So GoPro Hero 7 Black, 20 megapixel camera, dual screen front and back, 4K at 60 frames per second. The newer one, the 9, does 5K at 30 frames a second, just so you know. It's hyper smooth video stabilization. It's got time warp, time lapse, live streaming capability. So you pair it up to your phone, you can go Facebook Live or whatever. It's got voice control. You can wake it up with a voice. It shoots raw photos as well. So anyone that's into the photography, you can shoot it in RAW, which means you can edit better. It's got a 3.5mm audio mic input. It's got Wi-Fi, it's got GPS, it's got Bluetooth, rechargeable 1720 milliamp lithium-ion battery. Battery life's about 1 to 2 hours, depending on what resolution you're shooting in. And the battery charge time takes about 3 hours. So some of the pros of that camera: dual screen. If you go for the new Hero 9, you get to shoot in 5K. If not, it's 4K. The hyper smooth is pretty good, and we'll talk about that in a minute. You can obviously buy optional lenses. It's got quite a big battery, which I suppose in the newer version, if you're shooting at 5K, you're going to need. Yep. One of the other pros is if you're looking, the Hero 7 Black that we used, I think you can get it for about 240 odd quid just now, because obviously the new ones are coming out, and it'll probably take another dip again, just shortly. I
think it will do, especially as I say, with the 9 starting to lose a bit of money.
Exactly.
I mean, a bit of that will be a push for bikers and for action folk using it for, getting out and away and finally getting to go places.
Aye.
And try and push the stock, but yeah.
Yep, exactly. Especially with the good weather and as you say, riding season coming in. Some of the cons: latest model when this year, what might come out this year, assuming they bring out a Hero 10 like they normally.
Yes.
They normally bring them out about September, October time.
Yeah.
Just in time for Christmas, but they're normally around about the kind of 349 mark. I think the Hero just now, when I looked at this a couple of weeks back, it was about 330. It was the cheapest I could find, but they might have taken money off it since again, just because it's coming.
Sure, I saw about 279 or something like that. But
so
I could be mistaken.
There are frame rate limitations, which would have been nice to see higher.
It depends what you're looking for with frame rates, and we could have a wee chat about that. But I think it depends what you're using it for. You know, frame rates probably on a bike's great to have higher frame rates because you can really slow stuff down without losing the detail.
Aye, and I think that's but again, it depends, I suppose. If you're just using it as like a dash cam and you're just filming where you're going and you're not really bothered about getting creative with it, then I don't think it's a big issue, but you never know. Standard picture in low light, it's not the best, but night mode seems to have improved it slightly, and that's about it, really. I mean, the playback can be a little bit glitchy on the unit, but you're not really going to watch it on that tiny wee screen.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
How did we find it when we stuck it onto a bike? Well, stuck it in the front of my bike.
Stuck it in front of your bike. Unfortunately, you'll see some when we put up the footage, you'll be able to have a look at it on our Instagram page and all that kind of stuff. And you put it through your screen, you know.
I sat behind my big screen.
Big screen, so you get a reflection and all that. So depending on where you mount it is key, you know, because when we look at the action cam that I used in the back of the Triumph without the screen, it's clearer. It's clearer, but it still looked amazing. The stabilisation in it is fantastic for the bike. You know, really, really good.
I think that's the one thing. Pretty much all the cameras I think you used have really remarkable stabilisation. I was really quite surprised at the stabilisation, and especially on the GoPro and then the Osmo, which we'll come on to talk about. It gets quite hypnotic. You just kind of watch it. You're watching the white lines. You're in a kind of groove, just watching. Even though it's not the most exciting road in the world, you do get kind of drawn in. It was quite.
It's really good, yeah, really good.
I think the only thing I think is if you were to mount it somewhere where you could plug it in, so you didn't have the concern of a battery, and you shot in a reasonable. Because if you were going out for a good long drive, I mean, let's say for example we were going from here to Glencoe, I don't think I wouldn't want to film all the way up, because from here to Loch Lomond's pretty dull. Up beside of Loch Lomond's lovely.
Yeah.
And it's got a decent wide angle on it, so you can get a nice enough view.
Yeah, you'd be pulling in to just start that recording or whatever, because you wouldn't want it to. Yeah.
And then there's little bits further up where you would maybe switch it off and then switch it back on again, and you can go to Glencoe so that you could have it going through the valleys, and actually going through the glen. Why did I say valley? It's a glen.
I know.
Slap myself. So if I was running on battery, then I would probably need to have 2 or 3 batteries. I think if I was going if we were out for the day, I would need to have a couple of batteries, I think, at least.
Aye, definitely. Yeah. And I think that's the same for all the cameras, really, to be honest. You know, you need a couple of spare batteries if you're going out for the day.
Aye.
You know, none of them will last you a whole day. That's just not the way. You know, I think a lot of them are really designed for, 10, 15 minute video clips and stopping it, and then, especially for like your extreme sports and stuff.
Aye.
Those kind of things. But I thought the image quality was really good. Colour was nice, crisp on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you're saying the 9 does 5K. I think 5K is still a bit of a gimmick for a lot of people. If you're going to film in 5K, who's going to be able to watch it in 5K?
Aye, that's true. And to be honest, the 4K that we shot in was pretty. Again,
super crisp.
It was more than crisp enough. Do you know what I mean? What it would be like if we put it on like a 70-inch TV, I'd imagine it wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah.
I'd imagine it would still hold it. So that's a good point.
A lot of TVs, if you put a 1080p signal on the TV, it'll upscale it anyway. So
that's true.
I think 4K and 5K are great selling points if you want to maybe use them slightly more professionally. But for the average person filming their bike ride, if it does 4K, it's way more resolution than you're going to need.
The one thing that annoys me about the GoPro, and it's not so much the camera, it's the mounting.
Aye.
That's the bit that kind of, purely because I think because of where I tried to mount it with my bike. You know what I mean? So it might be different depending on what bike you've got and depending how kind of carefree you are with where you stick things. I just found that I was like where did I really put it? Because anywhere I was going to get a good point with the kind of suction cup thing, there's kind of contours on the panels, and you kind of then going, well, where I really stick it on there?
How tight's that going to be?
Even though it's only like a 200 or 250 quid camera, still, would you really want to stick it on there and bomb along the motorway at 7 mile an hour or whatever? Because the next thing is passing you. You know what I mean? It's through somebody's Mini behind you's windscreen. That's the only thing. It was quite kind of footery to find a good place to mount it. What else we got? What was the next one we used?
We used a DJI Osmo Action, which is DJI's version of the GoPro. I think currently sitting about 300 odd quid, £329. They haven't upgraded. This has been out for a few years now, this Osmo Action. They haven't upgraded it. So I suspect either there'll be a new one coming in, or they're not really going down that route with the DJI stuff, So they just upgraded the DJI Pocket, which is a small gimbal type camera, which you wouldn't really mount on a motorbike as such. It's not a, because the thing would just wobble about everywhere.
Aye.
But I don't really know if they're maybe necessarily going in for that in a big way, or there could be a new Osmo Action coming very soon. But I've certainly not seen any hints or
Nah,
things.
no, I've not seen anything.
Very much the pocket was rumoured. They've just brought out a new drone, so they're certainly. I don't think maybe the GoPro market's where their heads at the minute. So we'll see what it is. But it's only a 12 megapixel camera as opposed to the 20 megapixels in the GoPro.
Couldn't tell the difference.
But you couldn't tell the difference.
No.
But I think, and that's maybe more for photographs. I think most people, anything above 12 megapixels, unless you're really looking at it professionally, you don't really notice.
No.
You know. And also the GoPro 7 was out after the Osmo Action. So I think at the time it was a GoPro 4 or 5 or something was its kind of competition, and that was coming in at 12 megapixels. So 4K video, 24 frames per second to 60 frames per second. 8 times slow motion, which is 120 frames per second at 1080p,
which is better than the GoPro.
It's got the GoPro, but you're doing it at 1080p. HDR video, it's quite good at 4K at 30 frames per second. So if you're not wanting to go and tweak it in post, get some nice crisp colours and all that coming out of there. Time lapse mode, which is great. I've used that a few times. Time lapse mode is fun, and you could take that on a longer journey because the battery lasts longer on time lapse.
Oh,
yeah, so you
clever.
could do that. Does movie, MP4, JPEG and DNG format. So DNG is RAW, so it does shoot in RAW. And it takes a micro SD card, 256 gig. It's got a front and back screen. It's got touchscreen. The back screen's touchscreen and it's voice activated as well. It's got a 13 megaamp battery, 135 minutes at 1080p with Rocksteady turned off. Rocksteady is their stabilisation thing. About an hour at 4K with Rocksteady on. So if you're really pushing it to its limits, then you've got about an hour's filming in it. 90-minute battery charge time. It does actually charge really quick. Yeah,
that's half of the GoPro.
Half the GoPro. Again, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, waterproof, which is brilliant. The GoPro needs a case, doesn't it? Oh no, the 7's waterproof.
No, 7's waterproof.
It was the ones before
it.
And it can go down to -10, which is obviously pushed for like the.
Which is handy in this country.
Handy in this country just for being on the bike.
That's summer.
It's obviously pushed for like extreme snow sports and that kind of stuff. Rocksteady is their image stabilisation, as we said before. It's got dual screens. It's got a super slow motion, which is good fun. I've used that to film my dogs, which is great fun when they're trying to catch a treat in their mouth. The Rocksteady stabilisation is actually pretty good. It is pretty good. That one, looking at phone, we put it on the back of my Triumph, and there's some great shots. Just Darren behind me, just you honestly think that you were on some sort of
it's
steady camera.
It was a good shot.
Really good shot. It's got loads of optional lenses and things. I've got some neutral density filters and some polarizing filters. So if you wanted to make things a bit more creative and a bit more cinematic, there's lots and lots of options at a reasonably cheap price. There's a company called Freewell which do a lot of DJI stuff. They've got some great sets of filters and things like that. They're doing for the GoPros and things as well. So you can really get some really nice creative shots using those.
Limited by your imagination
and your expertise. But it's expensive for what it is. And it hasn't really come down in price since it first came out. Keep an eye on DJI though. If you do fancy one, they do quite often do kind of flash sales and things and stuff like that. So it's one of these things. It's a great sensor, but it's not the biggest megapixel sensor.
But again, that's more for taking stills.
That's not so much the video. The video resolution's 4K, so you're going to take that no matter what.
At the video on that camera on the back of your bike,
I
loved it.
It's good.
And again, maybe it's the fact that I'm being biased because it was me that was in the shot, but just the angle that it was at and how stable it was and how crisp it was.
It's got a really nice wide angle in it.
It was a lovely shot.
I mean, another thing to note about all these cameras is that yes, we've just taken the files off the camera and put them onto the PC, but they've actually, you can take them straight from the camera onto your phone or onto your mobile device and edit them in its own software. DJI's got software, DJI Memo, I think it is, for the Osmo thing.
GoPro's got its own quick, I think they call it.
And the Insta360 camera we're going to talk about has also got its own, software that you can pop on and just download straight to your phone. So you could actually get yourself up to Glencoe, film yourself going through Glencoe, and have it on Facebook before you come home.
And we had 2 Instas.
We had 2 Instas, didn't we? So the next one was the Insta360 Go 2, which is actually Insta's smallest and newest action cam.
It is cool.
It is really cool. Insta360, company from somewhere in China anyway, the Shenzhen region or whatever. And it's tiny, isn't it? It's absolutely tiny.
It's the equivalent of using a big mic versus a lapel mic It's a little tiny thing. I couldn't even describe what size
it's
it
probably
is.
about an inch in height. Do you know what I mean?
And it's
got some
half
really
an inch.
cool accessories and things that you get with it when you buy it. So there's a pendant you wear under your jacket or your jumper that's magnetic, and the thing just clips onto it.
Aye,
One tap and it turns it. It's really cool, right? It's really cool. It's 144p resolution, so it's not 4K, but it's better than 1080p. Yeah.
Aye.
2.7K roughly, isn't it?
Aye, thereabouts, aye.
And it does that at 50 frames per second, and do it at 50 frames per second because when you slow things down, it's really cool. Again, it's got flow state stabilization, which is their Rocksteady or their.
They just name them all differently.
Yeah.
But
It's hands free. You can mount it anywhere. Really, really well. There's 3 or 4 different mounting things you get with the camera. It's waterproof to 4 meters, and actually, I mean, this is not on the bike, but one of the cool things I've filmed using the Insta360 Go 2 is putting it inside a glass and pouring water in as if you're like pouring
as
a
if you're
cup of
thinking
tea,
it in.
and then you can just do that, and it literally looks like you can see yourself. But it's really cool.
That's cool.
It's very good. Auto editing, hyperlapse it, which is really cool. Really speed up. It's got slow motion. There's a wee remote control that comes with its own wee case that acts as a remote control. The case also has its own wee mini tripod in it as well.
It's just the coolest thing ever. It is
it.
the coolest thing. It is like a Bond gadget. It's so good.
It's so good. You can, and then you can just preview it all, and you can actually use your phone to control it as well as a remote control. So it's really cool. 35-minute charge time and 150 minutes usage at 1080p with basic stabilization. It's the battery power and it's amazing.
Aye, for something so small, it's frightening.
There's an Insta360 Go. This is the Go 2. The Insta360 Go used to limit your video clips to like 30 seconds. This one has
just runs.
It's 10 minutes. So it does limit your video clip sizes because the sensor heats up. But so it has to stop and let the sensor cool down. I would say that's a con. Really, the biggest con is if you wouldn't use it to film your whole run.
No,
you know what I mean. But if something cool was coming up, it is literally a tap of your finger on the camera and it's on.
Go boop, and it's on.
And it's on. That's it. But very small, decent battery life, really cons. But it's expensive. But it's £300. For the thing.
But it's £300 with a whole load of extra gadgets.
Yeah.
Because you get a lot of stuff in it as the kind of main. You mean it's not just like you buy that and then you go and buy the wee case and buy this and buy that. It's kind of like almost one package.
You can take it out of the box and not need any extra stuff for it.
Aye.
You can buy some lens guards and things. There's a few wee tweaky things that you can do with it, but it's cool. It's got a really cool video mode called Pro Mode as well, where you can actually, if you're into video, then you can actually manually set all your settings and you can get filters for it, so you can get it a bit more creative and cinematic. It's probably really cool for when you come off the bike and maybe you're sitting somewhere really nice. And I know there's like my Triumph, and there's like gaps through the engine that if you put that on the end of like a selfie stick or something, you could actually have it push through your engine and out to the other side of the bike to show you where you've parked your bike. So there's some really cool creative stuff you can do with that, or through the wheels or something.
I think that's the thing. I think it's just that small. There's nothing else like it.
Aye.
Do you know what I mean? At that size.
It's a real niche market, but it's a really cool wee thing to have. And yeah, it's £300, but actually, if you're into your video and want some really quirky angles and stuff,
if you like capturing images of your bike, then you're never gonna get that thing. Will give you.
It'll take photographs as well, obviously.
Aye, that thing will just give you so more unusual shots of the bike that you wouldn't normally get through any other camera.
We also took out the Insta360 1X2.
This is my favourite.
And we've got the 1X2 now.
This is my favourite.
And this is brilliant, right? This is we. It's a niche market. It's a lot of people think they're just a gimmicky thing, but to be honest, they're just so much fun.
Aye.
You're not going to be getting yourself image quality like Scorsese on a red camera or something like that. But for just downright sheer pleasurable fun and quirky, videos, you can't really beat it.
As you say, it's probably not something I'd shoot a whole trip with, but for definite areas of trips, I would quite happily pull over, spend the time setting that up properly.
Yep.
And this, because there's so many possibilities. I mean,
and we could go through this. We could go through the stats of it. And I'll quickly run through the stats of it but it doesn't really do justice to what it is.
No.
So, for instance, it's got a 5.7K 360 degree dual lens capture, which 5.7K sounds amazing. But that's because it's capturing a 360 degree picture.
Yep.
It really brings it down to 1080p.
Aye.
You know, any bit you're looking at on that view is 1080p.
But it's 1080p all the way around.
Yeah, all the way around. And then it's got all the stuff, you know, flow state stabilization. It's got a touch screen on it. It's got a 360 where you can actually look around the camera using the touch screen. Waterproof to 10 meters. It's got really good 360 degree audio. The mic in it's for a wee unit. The mic's really cool in it. We didn't really pick that up because we were on a bike, so all you really heard was the noise of the bike. But
no, but it's one of those ones. If you were to almost do a drive by, because you get the mic being 360, you get the get it. You
exactly.
mean
You get that. You get the Doppler effect. There you go. And
that's the scientific name for it, as opposed to
I've been watching far too much Big Bang Theory, and then it's got all the stuff, time shift, you know, all the fun stuff that the 360 app does. It shoots pictures in RAW. It's got 85 minutes charge time. Now the Insta 1X only lasted for about half an hour, so it's a massive upgrade in battery life.
Aye, that is
really, really good.
Aye.
Superb image quality for what it is. Although I have to say that's outdoors. I question the image quality in artificial light and low light isn't great.
Is it no?
No, it's not great. So brilliant for outdoors, extreme sports on the bikes and stuff like that. But if you're going to be using it indoors for anything, then it's very grainy. Yeah. You know, I'd really say that's a bit of a con there. But the coolest thing, one of the coolest things, is this invisible selfie stick.
By a country mile.
So if anyone's been on the Facebook page and saw what it looks like with me on the bike with the Insta360, I had a 3-foot pole sticking out my back with a camera, you know, maybe a couple of foot above my head.
Yep.
Eventually. But when you look at the video, you cannot see the pole. You can see it in the shadow. It's funny because you can see the shadows.
We'll post some pictures of you just before we pulled out of where we were.
Aye.
And you can just see the pole. You know what I mean, for one of the other cameras, because the other cameras don't. You mean it's an invisible selfie stick to the Insta, but no to all the other cameras or the people driving by.
The people driving by, absolutely. This gives some really weird looks, yeah.
And I don't know if that's a con or a pro. The people, because the amount of times you said to me, "Oh, there's that guy. Did you see his face?"
I think to be honest, it's probably one of the best things for bike safety because people notice you.
Well, people notice you with a radar sticking out. That's what it's like.
And it's packed full of features, right? So some of the stuff that you can do on the Insta360 app is just brilliant.
Oh, aye, we had a bit of a play. Yeah. I mean, earlier on, and you were showing me some of the stuff,
and that was just very simple stuff. They've got some inbuilt functions that you AI in the actual app that you just put the clip in and it finds it all.
It finds it all for you.
We'll maybe try and see if we can get one of them working for you and let you see how it looks, which is cool. Cons, it's expensive.
I know, but
it's worth every penny in my opinion. It's £430 for the kit, right? But you know you will get, even just using it for one day, you get your money's worth out of it because it's just so much fun.
Aye,
so much fun. Get some amazing. It gets shots you'll just never get from any other camera, but you do get right funny looks at passers by, don't you? So,
but it's not that. See, I think especially on a bike run, right? If you could find the optimum way to mount it, right, without having, you know what I mean, like you're in Vietnam, you know what I mean, and you're trying to make radio calls with a big huge thing sticking out the top. If you can find a real clever way of mounting it, the actual possibility, you're then your trip or wherever you were going on your trip, right? And even if you were only to shoot the bits, like we've said with the GoPro and the Osmo and whatever, if we were only shooting the bits that were of interest, right? So the kind of nice scenery around Loch Lomond or whatever, if that was the route we were taking, right? We're using that as a standard route. The bit at Glencoe, you mean getting to the Greenway Lane, kind of all that kind of stuff. If you were only filming those bits, right, just with what you would collect and the options you have by creating those different points, and you mean creating the look, and I mean you could create a whole movie. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
Just out of those
and
3 or 4 clips.
If you're out in groups, you know, or you know what you could do with that camera if you're following somebody or your pillion passengers holding the camera or something like that, you could get some images. I mean, I've got the extended invisible selfie stick, which
God, you get an extended one.
You get an extended one, which I think's about 6 or 7 foot long or something like that, and you can almost turn it into a drone, you know.
Aye.
I mean, from standing, I wouldn't put that in the back of a bike. You know, that would be slightly dangerous. But
if you had a pillion and you weren't going that fast,
you could absolutely do that. Amazing. You know, and there's lots of wee daft gadgets like that for it. There's a thing called bullet time, which is super slow motion, and you can
that's your whole Matrix thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but you can get a cord that you swing round your head, and it slows everything down as it spins.
I've seen that on the website.
It's really cool.
Not that I was on the website looking at just whether I should actually buy one or not. I was going,
I've got one. So, there's some really cool things.
We need a pillion passenger.
It's delicate though. It's a delicate machine. You know, you can buy a case for it that will cover it up, but that then bulks it up. You've got a wee bit of issue when the two cameras join. You know, it's never quite as nice a join between the two cameras.
Because you get that extra thickness.
But the software can do a pretty decent job with the AI of rectifying that, as long as you tell the software that you've got a case on it. But the lens itself, I believe, thankfully it's not happened to me, but it does scratch quite easily. So you know, if you're going to go anywhere where there's a chance it's going to fall off or whatever, you know, it's going to break if you don't have that case on it. So there's a few extra quid you're going to have to spend on it if you're taking some chances with it. You know?
Aye. It's still my favourite.
Is brilliant.
It's still my favourite. We'll talk about that at the end.
Aye.
And then the other camera we had, which just by coincidence was already fitted to my bike, which isn't so much of an action cam as more of a kind of dash cam recording, is the Inov K2. I've got the K2, which is a front and rear camera attached to the bike. So for front and rear camera, both filming at 1080p. They're both IP67 dust and waterproof. It's got a little DVR unit that sits under the seat, which takes 256 gigabit SD card. It records in two formats now that I know. That's something that we're not going to. It's got a little GPS unit and it records date, time, speed, etc., which you can tailor, so you can switch off the speed or the date or whatever, which is quite handy.
And just so you don't incriminate yourself.
Pretty much, because that's really what it is. That's kind of the purpose of it. It's in case anything was to ever happen and somebody pulls it, at least you got the recording, because it records in little loops. Little chunks, and then once the SD card gets full, it goes back and it starts overwriting them unless you lock one. It's got a 120 degree viewing angle for visibility. It switches on when you switch the ignition on. It's not on all the time, which is good. And then it takes about 10, when you power off, it's got a 10-second kind of overrun so that it can finish right into the DVR and then switch itself off, which is quite good. It's got a parking mode, which means when the bike is moved, the DVR senses it automatically starts recording so that you can actually see somebody stealing your bike. Now, how you would get the footage off it is beyond me. Now, if your bike's got a tracker, then fair enough. At least if you got the bike back, they had the camera, you could at least get the footage. But if they've stole your bike, it's not as if you can. It's not as if it messages you and go, look, somebody's stealing your bike.
It's like an almost really good feature.
Exactly.
It's almost there.
But it's
if there was a way that it could talk to your phone,
if it had a SIM card in it,
so
if it was built and fitted, if the tracker and the DVR unit were all in one, then that would be ideal, because then you'd have the tracker, but then it would be quite chunky, and it's where you hide it. Whereas the tracker's easier to hide on a bike, whereas they could just find it and take the full DVR out, and because it's literally under the seat, because it's even the size of a credit card, but obviously that bit thicker. And it's got the iOS app and stuff, which allows you to obviously record that, download the stuff and share it with friends and stuff. Pros, it's rugged. It is quite rugged. The DVR's kind of solid. There's no getting away from that. And the cameras are they're a kind of all enclosed unit and stuff, so they're quite good. And they're all metal brackets and stuff, so it's all secure. It's all secure. The app connectivity is good. The only thing I would say is transferring videos to the phone for the app really slow. It creates its own Wi-Fi network and you connect it and then download that way. It's so slow. I just eventually just took the seat off, took the SD card out and plugged it into the camera, plugged it into the computer. The GPS tracking's good. The parking sensor is, I'm going to say it's good, but it's not brilliant because of that little missing fact.
If you get the bike back, then it's good because you'll have that.
Aye. The cameras are really small though, so they're really good to hide on the bike. So mine's are really kind of well hidden.
I never noticed them until you showed me where they were. So.
Which is good. It is expensive though. It's 290 quid for the full kit. And then obviously you've got to wire it up and all that kind of good stuff. Which if you've already got like a Hex Easy Can or something like that, it just plugs in and you can plug it straight into the Easy Can and the box no bother. If you're failing that, you're obviously splicing wires and fitting it and stuff like that. There is a new version of it, which is the K5, which just allows a bigger memory card, and it does 4K and it's got a wee remote control and stuff like that. And they're bringing out a K3, which is a slight improvement on the K2, but not as good as the K5. And that's kind of coming out. I like it for the point of view that I can just, once it's fitted to the bike, I don't need to worry about it.
Yep.
And I don't need to worry about having to record something. If something happens on a run that I want to use in a bit of footage, I can use it and it's there. I like the camera angles, but that's personally, that depends on the bike and depends where you fit them. You could get that if you're bold enough with your GoPro or your Osmo or whatever, you could get the same shot. You know what I mean?
I suppose if what you're losing is your flexibility, though, that you've got with other cameras.
That's exactly my point. You are losing that flexibility. You know what I mean? I didn't buy it for the footage for that more than anything else. I bought it for the fact that if I'm on an IAM run, so if I'm out on an observed ride, rather than being reliant on the observer, maybe having, so one of the guys has got a Sena 10C, which is like a comms unit with a camera built in.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
And he filmed my run one night so that he could then send me stuff, whereas I don't need to worry about that now because I'm always recording it. So if there's something happens that I want to look back on, I can just go in and pull it and look at it. So it's good for that point of view, and I can just set it so that the clips are that wee bit longer when I'm on that kind of run, rather than being little increments. So that if when you're out and something does,
when you sent me the files across to have a look at, there was lots of wee chunks on.
Aye, there's loads of wee chunks.
And you know what's interesting? Just to go back to the Osmo action, I've just remembered now. The Osmo action will do that as well.
Oh, so does it? It can just break it down into little.
If you film an hour's worth of riding, for instance, you don't get one file for an hour. You get chunks of files.
Oh, do you? See, that's quite good because you could then use that if it overlapped. If it re-recorded, then you could use it. It doesn't
re-record it just until the card fills up.
Aye, but nice if that re-over, and maybe that's a firmware thing that maybe that DJI could just release a firmware that allowed that to happen, because it would make a good
dash cam,
dash cam footage then.
If you're listening to DJI, we'll take 5% commission every unit sold. Thanks so much. Cheers.
But that was the cameras that we used. My personal favourite by a country mile, the 360. Just for the only reason that the footage and what you can do with it is just so unusual. Yeah, it's just so unusual.
I mean, I think most cameras now are at a certain level that you're going to get good footage, and it's really your personal choice now. Like you, I love the 360 camera, especially the 1X2, because it just lasts longer. It's it's just got a few nice features that the 1X didn't have. Yeah. So for me, 360 just because it's so much fun. But if I was maybe doing more of a kind of traditional video, then the GoPro or the Osmo is probably a better one. Yeah, from that point of view,
I would say so. I think it's, for me, the Osmo edges it purely because the filter, you can actually just unscrew the lens and put the little filter on it. Yep. So if you want that little polarized filter to get that nice kind of to change the sky almost, if you're in that run,
or if you're on a really sunny day and you just want to be able to
dull it down a bit,
because having video being a kind of passion of mine, I don't just set it to auto.
Aye.
When I'm filming things. So if you're a set it to auto person, great. It does a really good job in auto. But you'll see if we put some of the things up, that the exposure and the colour and the white balance and all of these things that you'll know about if you do video does change depending on your lighting conditions. And if you want that consistency, then the Osmo allows you to do that.
Aye. Yeah. I think for me, getting a conclusion on this is difficult, right? Because putting your biker head on, right, and saying, if I'm going on a trip, then for me, I think you're right. I think the Osmo or the GoPro, you can just put it in a position, you can film stuff, you can switch it on and off, they do voice control and all that kind of good stuff.
The batteries are removable, so you can bring spare batteries with you.
Exactly. Is a no-brainer. I think that's the one that I would, if I was only buying the one, that's the one I think I would buy. If I was planning to do a lot of trips and I wanted to film it and capture it for nostalgic reasons. If I was buying one for more in the event of an accident. For me, it would be one of the Inovs, so the K2 or the KT or whatever. As long as I was comfortable with the fact that anything I want to use on a trip to include into a kind of little video montage and all that is going to be in a fixed position, which might not be the best for capturing whatever it is you're going to see. As long as you're living with that, then fine. It's more for in the event of something happening that you then potentially need evidence for. But I still can't get away from the Insta360.
Which is just fun. It's amazing.
And it's one of those ones that if I know I'm going on a trip and I know I'm going to certain places where the footage is going to be, or the scenery is going to be amazing, why would I not take that? You know what I mean? Why would I not go through the hassle of setting that up to get that full whole, and it's not just panoramic, it's so much more than panoramic.
Absolutely, yeah.
You can see yourself from the top down on the bike. You can see what's behind you can see in the sky, you can see literally
I've mounted that 360 pointing out the back of my bike, you know, so it's maybe like 2 foot behind the bike,
and it follows you,
you know.
Aye.
And if you know with the right number of cable ties and the right angle, it could be like a drone's following you. That's how good the image is.
So I think it's one of those ones, and obviously
do not go into any low ceilinged car parks
or low branches. Aye, or McDonald's. We'll obviously put all that footage together. Ian's going to work his magic and put it on a little kind of video montage, and you'll see the differences between them. And then it's really down to you to have a look at it and say, wow, now I get what they're talking about. And I'm pretty sure that Ian will show all the capability that the 360 has.
I'll make it look a bit of fun. Yeah, absolutely.
Tiny planets.
Tiny planet.
But is that fair?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think for me, the least likely one I would get would be your K2.
Aye.
Because it only does one thing, really.
Exactly.
It does it very well.
Aye, but
does it really well
in a fixed position.
But it only does one thing,
it.
you know. But I think having a K2 for that reason is the best thing to use for that.
Aye, and it doesn't get you money off your insurance or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's purely that in the event of something happening, at least you can prove it wasn't your fault.
But being a kind of creative filmmaker type thing,
aye,
I would just have one of each. Which, wait a minute, I've got so.
I think that's.
I had 3 different cameras on that bike when I was running, didn't I?
Aye, you did. You had the. Well, you had 3 different cameras.
And if I'd put one at the front as well, easily.
We should have got another camera.
We should have.
Big strap for an SLR or something.
I know. Aye.
And it's not. You could have had the drone following us as well.
My Nikon Z6 on it. You know what I mean?
And the drone.
following
and a phantom at the back tracking us. Would have been like a full-on shoot.
I think we might get into trouble since we were down the side of Glasgow.
Since we were doing a Top Gun moment, and you'll see that when you look at the video. When we put the video up, you will see that it was a very Top Gun moment.
Something close to it.
Exactly.
As much as we can
legally get away with it.
I know.
Ah, brilliant.
Yeah, so the conclusion really is that there is no conclusion other than watch it and make your own mind up.
Aye, exactly. I think it depends on what type of rider or what type of footage you want. What functions you want. What you're going to use it for. Are you going to use it all the time? Slick,
sharp images that helps you when you're dash cam stuff. The K2 is perfect. If you want fun, Insta360 One X2. There you go. And everything in between.
Episode 4 complete and in the bag. There's another one of the the only thing I think we wanted to talk about is the parish notes, but just kind of what we've got coming up in the podcasts. We've got a whole number of topics that we want to talk about in the coming weeks and months, from electric bikes and all kind of manner of good stuff. But we are also going to start launching a bit more of the social media side of stuff. We're going to have some video footage that will go along with this podcast, because we've obviously talked a lot about kind of cameras and stuff like that this week. And also we're going to have a little kind of video intro. Is that an intro? What would you call it?
We're going to try and find our inner Scorsese. Yeah, a kind of easy rider, but for the 21st century.
And this is planning to us kind of leading up to adding ourselves onto YouTube, because I think that's the only kind of media that we're not in, and we'll kind of add that little intro. Absolutely. And it means if we want to start doing little videos and stuff like that, we can add them up there quite simply, rather than try to upload them to Facebook and social media all the time. But it also means we can start putting the podcasts up there as well, so that if anyone's kind of sitting working at the computer, they don't need Spotify or whatever open, they can just listen via YouTube, which is quite cool. And then we can start to stream stuff in and along with that at the same time. Again, it's a massive thank you again for listening to our ramblings this week. As always, we are blown away by it, and we are, as I always say, just a couple of average bikers. This is just our opinion. It's nothing more than that. Nothing more.
Just, although this week we have decided that we do love a longer stroke. So thank you very much, folks.
That's going to be this week's episode. I'm telling you that. I'm just putting that up as episode 4, the longer stroke.
Remember that it was at the 70s, is it the 80s? Different Strokes, the TV program, Different Strokes.
This is Longer Strokes.
Longer Strokes, yeah. When the world seems right, do your longer strokes. Anyway, so thank you very much, folks, for listening. We've just, I'm going to go home now singing Longer Strokes. But anyway,
if you've enjoyed today's show and learning a bit about cameras and stuff, then be sure and like, share, and more importantly subscribe. Go through, catch up on some of the other shows that we've got up there. If you want to get in touch with us with any questions, possible big question, or just your thoughts on what we've talked about today and some of the footage, then please email us at averagebikersinacave@outlook.com, or get in touch via our Facebook or Instagram page. And just a massive thanks again.
Yes, thank you very much for listening, folks. It's been fun just sitting, chatting and nonsense. But just remember, folks, only a biker understands why a dog sticks his head out of a car window.
Ruff.